Well, Zach, for those of you who don't know, Zach is our producer. You hear his voice on the podcast, but a lot of times you don't see him. This is Zach. So, Zach, I know a few weeks ago we had the opportunity to actually have a few of the guys from Thrive Worship in here, and that was a lot of fun. I don't know if did you get a chance to hang out with them or talk to them much when they were in here?
Yeah, it was great. I really love talking to them. They're just such kind, like thoughtful people that you can tell they mean what they write in their songs. And
they're fun, they're engaging, and so I've had the opportunity of being a part of Experience Conference for several years now, and actually get to direct it, the conference in September in Orlando. And so we did an EC One Day, a one-day event of that here on our Pure Heart Church campus. And so actually where you were sitting, we had Corbin, we had Christian and Charmaine from Thrive Worship with us. It was a great time to, just get to know them better, and they're also crack-ups, which is always fun. Yeah. But I know you were recording us and everything and stuff, and so I think it sounded like a great session. You?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like we got to talk on a range of subjects. We got to talk about family life. Yeah. Got to hear them talk about, how they got started, how they handled COVID, all that stuff. I mean, it's super interesting and fascinating.
It felt like we bounced around to a bunch of different stuff, but yeah, we're going to dive right in, and I hope you enjoyed as much as we did our interview with Thrive Worship. It's not opening. There it is. There we go.
Nice.
I don't have to clap anymore. That's
the real deal.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, tape measure down.
That also works as a clap.
I was going to say.
It's good.
Nice solid transient on that.
Do we have a harmonica? Do you want to just start it?
Oh, yeah, that works.
I'll tell you what, it warmed my heart. I was actually out in the lobby when you started up with that, and I'm just like, is this happening right now? I'm like, this is awesome. I love that.
I picked it up right before Christmas, just to play on one of the songs we were doing.
Are you serious?
Yeah. It's funny, like with harmonica, you can become like a good player really quick, but to be a great player, it's like you learn really quickly, like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like the skill gap.
Yeah. See, I've got a 12-year-old, and I would argue going, you can't pick it up easily. No.
That's really funny.
You can take it away easily.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm like, nope, that's not a good sound.
When Corbin was learning it, he had like 6 of them in his pockets at all times. Like he'd walk around and we'd be like in staff meeting and someone would start singing happy birthday and you would just hear like in the corner, like, and he's
all
just
different keys.
Yeah, he's just like anytime he could, he's just been playing it.
It was like, I told him, I was like, it's like when, Steph Curry's walking around with a basketball in the offseason, you just got to be ready. Like he's got to get comfortable with that basketball.
Anytime.
But it's been fun. It's cool. It adds a cool dynamic piece to the set, and it's fresh. It's cool.
You don't hear it that often.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, next thing you know, it's like, now that you're doing it, next thing you know, you see elevation worship, harmonica.
The funny thing is, Corbin is going to die on this hill, whether it's either going to be the next awesome best thing, or he will never admit that it is not. But I'm with him right now. I think it's great. I
think it's a cool texture. We put it on. Yeah. I put it on the next radio single. So we'll see.
Nice, dude.
It's kind of quiet, but
the holder for it is what always gets me. It's just
I know,
it's just dude. So
have you seen the meme of Billy Joel doing it? And
no.
They're saying it's Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi. Because his head's all shaved and everything
totally
like that. I'm like, I can see that.
That sounds like a great Thrive Worship meme with Corbin.
So how many? Because Thrive Worship, there's a lot of people in it that are considered, but who is Thrive Worship? Who's a part of that team?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the heart of Thrive started from the church worship team, right? So it's kind of going like, what does it look like for the expression of Bayside's worship culture and experience to just start to gain some legs and traction outside of the church? So me, Charmaine, a guy named Peter, we just kind of started writing songs and releasing those songs. A guy named Taylor, who's a fantastic songwriter. So we
Taylor, who did the Devo last Experience Conference.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
So we all kind of just like organically started doing it, and then we signed with Integrity like 6 years ago. That contract just ended, so we're now like doing a new one. but we're actually looking at like who is that next core. And so right now it's myself, Christian, Charmaine, Taylor, Melinda, Jace, Chris. But really it's like, you know, it's we're trying to build that to be like a wide thing. So
Very cool. So I mean, I'm trying to get the timeline straight in my head. You guys were starting to develop this and everything. Lincoln was still at Bayside at the time, right?
Yep.
Okay. And where's he at now?
he's at a church down the street called Bridgeway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. I remember years ago, my first producer was a guy named Patrick Andrew, who was in a band called PFR from back in the 90s,
Okay.
Pray for Rain.
Yeah.
But he and Lincoln had toured together. And so out of the blue, we were just doing like a worship project when people were going, what's a worship project? You know, that type of thing. And he had just signed with, I forget what it was, the same label as Daryl Evans. That's
Okay.
a throwback. And Patrick was like, hey, do you just want to come out and drop some guitar on this? And he
that's
flew
awesome.
out and everything. And it was just, I'm going in my head, you know, just walking in the room, I'm just like, hey dude, what's up? You know, I'm like in my head it's going, oh my goodness. But the guy was complete like nut. And that's the thing that stuck with me was the fact that I'm going, he's crazy, you know, in a great way.
Yeah,
You know, and
totally.
everything. So you guys started like the songwriting process and pulling together while he was still there. Was there any like crossover influence on that?
Yeah.
stuff?
Oh yeah. Like I think, you know, so, Taylor and I wrote a lot for Lincoln.
Okay.
We did a lot of that. So I helped produce a little bit of one of his projects. And so, yeah, we were doing that and we would write with him a lot. I think the first Thrive song we did was with me, Pete, Taylor and him,
Oh, that's cool.
which was fun. So yeah, we did a lot of writing together and he was, helping kind of orchestrate it there at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
So Bayside, you guys, how long has Bayside been around?
95?
29 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
it-
great.
Yeah. 95, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Sounds right.
What have you guys, I mean, everyone went through this back in 2020 and stuff where, you know, it seemed like the world shut down. And I think there was a lot of polarization in stuff in general, you know, before that, but that feels like that really just accentuated. It's like everyone they dug in their heels and everything. How did you guys navigate that season? It still feels we're in it, but
I feel like everyone else, you just figured it out like on the run. It was like nobody had a roadmap. I think looking back on it now, I don't think anyone would say we did it perfect, you know? So I think a lot of it was like there was a desire to go, we cannot stop doing this ministry. We cannot stop church. We can't stop trying to give people an atmosphere where they can meet the Lord and hear the gospel. And so we came up with about a million different ideas, ran with a lot of them, pivoted. It was our word.
yeah, trigger word.
We didn't say
Trigger.
we didn't say canceled. We said pivot, right? It's like services canceled this weekend. It's like no. We're going to
pivoted
pivot this
to-
weekend. Yeah.
Okay.
So we were. I think. I mean, looking back on it, God was using. You know, He was working the whole time. But yeah, I think it was just a lot of what can we do? Like what resources do we have? How can we get the gospel in front of people? And I'm thankful that we get to have a team like this where we didn't feel like alone. And I think that was probably the most important thing we found was as long as we can do this in community and we're confident in the calling, then like we're good to go. We're not going to burn out.
I think I ran across so many different people that they were alone
Yeah.
in that. And man, I can't imagine that had to be extremely hard. And I think that's why we kind of seen this, I don't know what they've been calling the great resignation or whatever. You
Yeah.
see a lot of people who are just like, I'm done. you
Yeah.
know? How'd you guys shore up against, was it mostly the team dynamic that really helped encourage you guys, or were there other influences or things that really helped you guys push through that season?
That's a great question.
I feel like, yeah, I think it's, you'd be lying if you said that it didn't cross your mind.
Yeah.
Like, can I keep doing this during that season? Cause it was just so hard, you know,
Everyone's mad at you.
yeah, no matter what you
did.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so like there's so many dynamics to it, so many nuances to it. Like you kind of just wanted to curl up in a hole at some points. Right. I felt that way for sure. I think for me, it really came back to like asking myself hard questions, like why I feel like I kept going. Some of those hard questions were, like as tried as it may sound, like did Jesus turn away from the cross? Like he asked, he goes, God, can you take this away? But he eventually goes, I'm going to stay true to my calling. And I think that's been like the thing that kept me going is going, I'm going to ask the really hard questions, and try to answer them honestly for myself. And I think as I did that during this past season, it was going, what am I called to? One interesting thing I think that happened for everybody during that season is we all started asking also, what are the most important things to me, right? And we kind of eliminated some of the things that were auxiliary. And so for me, that was going, I'm going to really, really care about pouring into my own spiritual health and my family's spiritual health, and let that in turn flow into my creative expression. And so for me, that's kind of where I landed. I was like, you know what, ultimately I still feel called to create for the church, and I still feel called to, further my development as a believer, and, learn more about theology, learn more about faith, learn more about what it means to take up your cross on a daily basis. And so, and again, that is like practically overflowed into how I lead worship, how I write, how I interact with the people that I'm, surrounded by in those settings. And so
That's good. That's really, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit. It's kind of tied to it. First, the small talk question. It's not meant small talk, but your accent. Now, what's funny is how some people on team or what, there's something about your accent and that people naturally go, oh, she should be on the worship team. We have someone, we were like, we should see if she can sing. There was someone on our preschool team or whatever has a great accent. She's from New Zealand. And so right away we had people on the team going, we should see if she sings. But I mean, nothing by the other than like, so where are you from, or where's the accent from? Because
Sydney, Australia.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is that distant removed history wise, or is that a recent move, or?
Well, I mean, I was raised there.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been born like all my cousins, but my parents have, or it still runs to this day, a full-time music ministry that I was actually born on tour in the States.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy. So now that I have kids of my own and like I've gone through the birthing experience, I think my parents were crazy. I'm like, how did you do that? Oh my gosh, the stress. But they were just, they were young and sold out for the gospel. And it's a ministry that still runs in Australia. It's the longest standing music ministry in Australia's history.
it's crazy.
Yep. And so, I was raised in that. My family didn't see me in Australia until I was about 5 months old after that tour. And that was my life. I came to the States when I was 16. And just long story short, came to the music industry. And it was easy to do that because I had an American passport. I was a dual citizen. Never in my wildest dreams. I had full, I just thought I was going to take over my parents' ministry, and I had a heart set on doing that. So when it pivoted to, going to bring it back.
Corbin's triggered.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Corbin's anxiety is going up. I just did not see that coming. And so we went to Nashville, did the whole music thing for like 15 years. And it was through that I got to know some people at Bayside, and then came to Bayside, met my husband and all of that. And when I first came to Bayside, everyone thought that I came from Hillsong, to the point that I would just nod my head and be like, yes, whatever you would like to believe. But it's obviously the most spiritual accent on the planet.
It really is. So, I feel closer to God hearing it.
There you go.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot of fun. I know that I sound pretty, not to my family. I don't sound that Aussie to them. I know I do here, but I've been around for a while. So.
Well, so the deeper question on that was because being raised in the States and everything, there's a natural mentality that we have. So when we're looking at things like the political landscape, when we're looking at kind of how people are and everything, there's so unfortunately so much familiarity to it that it's hard for us to be objective with it and everything. And so I was curious about how long you had been in the States to kind of go, like, when you look at everything, what the church is navigating, is it something that it's hard to like wrap your head around, or is it go, no, I've seen this before, this is familiar. How do you navigate as a worship leader seeing that type of polarization that's happening in the world that we live in?
I'm probably going to just age myself, but this is not new. I feel like this is sort of stuff that has been going around for a long time.
It's been building, yeah.
Yeah, and it's human nature. Like even before us, even in my parents' day, there was these extremes, because I was telling the guys the other day, ministry is suffering. Ministry is hard because people are messy, and kind of the vantage point of growing up in a music ministry that was we went to different churches, different denominations, and then different layers and shades of that denomination. So we went to like really evangelical Catholic churches, kind of Pentecostal driven.
Yep.
And then we went to Pentecostal churches that were super conservative, and you just go, you see it all. And I think throughout the ages, the war that every church has to, and every leader is just essentially fighting their ego. I remember, or my dad would always point out the fact that two of his disciples, and they started realizing Jesus, who he was, their immediate reaction was to say, we want to sit at your right hand. You know what I mean? As opposed to say, I want to take up that cross and follow you the way, you know what I mean? Like he was like, you're actually not ready to even make that call because you're not lowly enough. You haven't shed yourself enough. You haven't become so humble beyond even your wildest dreams to be worthy of that seat, And I wish people would, I think too often we maybe fight for that. You know what I mean? Even in leadership, because it's people and people are messy, and this is just the way it is, So maybe stop being surprised at it and just start reminding ourselves that there is a more humble way than we could possibly imagine, and that's what's expected of us.
I just have this feeling that's been growing in the pit of my stomach, just that what we're really wrestling with, what we're really battling against, is people not comprehending where their value comes from. The fact of who they are.
Right.
And, because we get defensive when people say things and we're actually not really sure if they're right, or we're going, they challenge us, or they push on something and we're not really secure in who we are, or what if they're right and what I believe is wrong? What if what they think about me is right and what I think about myself is wrong? And so you get challenged by it and you get defensive. And that all stems from the fact that we don't have an internal value that's confident. And I've been seeing that more and more, and I was sharing with a friend of mine, we keep taping leaves on the trees and calling it spring, instead of like going, that's not the issue, because we go, if we, we just need to go out there and we just need to proclaim this, or we need to stand against this, or going, I'm like, I think that's a symptom that we're dealing with, because then the root is deeper.
Right.
The root of what this country, or I think the world, is at the heart of it is people don't understand that they're valuable and why they're valuable.
Right.
And they're valuable because God has proclaimed them valuable if they would receive that value.
Yeah.
Right.
Man.
And we can do things all day long, but I think we're just going to see polarization deepened
Right.
until we actually understand that. But
And I mean, how do you live a life that is that commandment, love your neighbor as you love yourself? And I'm like, oh, actually, people don't know how to love themselves.
oh wow,
And so they don't know how to love people well. If they're running hard to the ground, their team's going to run hard to the ground. If they're not eating right, they're not going to, you know what I mean? Like if they're not, the stuff that they're taking, social media, what they're reading, what they're taking in,
that's good.
everything is going to affect. So then I'm like, oh, how do you actually love yourself well? You see yourself the way God sees you.
Yeah.
In other words, you see the good, the bad, the ugly, and you accept it. And you say, if he accepts that, where, from his vantage point, I can do no less. And then there's freedom in that. And then there's no judgment in how you treat other people.
Yeah.
You love and accept them. In other words, you're not blind to their weakness, but there's grace for it, as there's grace for yourself.
Yeah.
You
You guys were joking on stage a little bit earlier when we don't take ourselves that seriously, and then you were like, "I do," but but I think there's something, so many arguments or whatever that have been presented to me. People going, "I think you're wrong," and I'm like, "Maybe."
Yeah.
I'm like, "There's a good chance that yeah, maybe I am," or whatever. And it's like, where do I go with that?
Totally.
It just diffuses it. But
it's
Right.
interesting too, like just kind of going off of your thought there, Charmaine, like, because we are made in the image of God, right? And God is a just God, and he sees all this stuff and goes like, that's injustice. It needs to be repaid, or, whatever the situation may be. But then we're also living in this like new covenant of grace that we're washed white as snow, and that our sins are deep in the ocean. It's like, so we live with this nature because we're designed to want justice. We're designed for things to be made right. We're designed for things to be in order.
there are absolutes. Yeah.
Exactly. But then at the same time, we live with a thing that makes no sense, which is that we're supposed to be condemned to death, yet we're living in grace. And it's just really interesting. I think that kind of levels the playing field a little bit to go like, well, at the end of the day, to your point, maybe I am wrong. Maybe you're wrong. But the reality is, like, we're all under this beautiful blanket of grace that Christ has given us. And so, yeah, like our human nature is to do these things, but at the end of the day, it does come back down to, can I love myself? Can I love my neighbor? And can I love God?
That's really good.
That was
Yeah. I think
Thank you, sir.
he's like, I'm going to write that down and quote it as me.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, no joke. That was my whole life. And then I started reading C.S. Lewis, and I started listening and reading Tim Keller, and I was like, my dad made me think that was all him.
This is a smart guy right there.
I was raised on C.S. Lewis and his
so
thoughts
funny.
and ideologies, and I was like, I did not know that was C.S. Lewis. I thought that was Werner Carrasco.
You'd always start with, like I've always said, and then
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis quote.
Yeah.
But legit, I'm going to do the same with my kids.
totally.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
No
They will,
problem.
I have convinced my kids that I know absolutely everything. And even if I don't, I still know it.
Right.
So, yeah. And as long as I can keep up that facade, it's
Yeah.
great.
Exactly. Exactly.
The best.
So we were talking a couple things like with kids and everything. You've got some kids.
I got
some kids. You've got a kid on the way.
I got a
You're
kid
the
on
one
the
with
way.
twins.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes. I think I'm the last one,
Crazy.
right? In our
Yeah.
group. Yeah. I'm the last one. So I got a lot of wisdom. I'm really thankful. I'm really, really thankful that, these guys have put the work in, and now I just get to learn from them. But it is a really fun season. We're all having kids. And Charmaine and I were just talking. She asked me, she's like, what are you excited about and what are you scared about? And I said, they're actually the same thing. I'm super nervous, right? Like any other dad, like first time dad or parent, that I'm going to screw this kid up somehow, right?
But you will.
Yeah. And
And it's okay.
yeah,
there you go.
No, 100%. And the flip side of that is I'm actually super excited that I'm going to go, okay, what I'm nervous about, most nervous about, like if I'm going to screw this up somehow, is also me going, oh, now I get to understand the character of God better and become a better man, become a better dad, become a better husband, because I'm not going to screw this kid up. The best I can try, right? I'm going to do my best not to screw this kid up. But it has been a really fun season, and I don't, it's your first child. You hear everything, don't know what to expect, but we're ready. We're ready for this blessing for sure. So
I'll tell you, and you've probably heard a million different things, and like you were saying
Yes.
earlier, you've heard some from across the board, everything, even in opposition to each other on advice. But one of the scariest things for me was when they released us from the hospital and we
Yeah, I've
were
heard
going
this.
home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, putting this child into a car seat and like,
How does this work?
so is someone going to check in on
Yes.
us?
Yes.
Like, like, what am I doing? I remember asking the nurse, I'm like, is it okay if I like change his clothes? And she's like, he's yours.
This is your
Yes,
kid.
I know.
I know, but I still need to ask, you know?
Yeah.
But so what's the weirdest advice? Have you gotten anything that's just weird about going, if you do this, and you're like, really?
You know what? Everybody has an answer for every problem, you know? So it's like, oh, if you're, you know, if the baby's in there a little too long, you're overdue, pinch your heel with 10 pounds of pressure and then throw salt over your left shoulder and that baby will come right out. It's like that
No.
kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
You do this and this happens to your wife, or your wife does this. And you're sitting there going, it's not working.
It's not working.
She hasn't gone into labor. I've been pinching all day long.
Yes. No, it's funny. You hear so many things. We were just talking about this before. The sweetest things. Did I say this to you before? We were
You were talking about the sweetest thing that someone said to you.
Yeah.
Because everyone doom and gloom.
Yes,
or like,
doom and gloom. It's like, okay, get ready to get no sleep. Get ready to your life is over.
Cole's like,
basically.
yeah.
Corey's like, yeah.
He's like,
Corey
amen.
just had
Amen.
twins.
Preach
and
it.
Yeah. And I understand the sacrifice that we're about. You know, it's like we decided upon this and we kind of knew what we were getting into, right? But the sweetest thing has been in the midst of all the doom and gloom. Hey, like here comes a new chapter where you're going to have to sacrifice a lot, which is true. The sweetest things have been, hey, this is going to be the sweetest season of your life. And so it's been fun to, again, I get to see these guys be such great parents, and I feel like I've learned a ton from them. And I know that they got my back, and all our kids get to play together now, which is fun. So maybe next songwriting retreat, we just set up a room. Yeah.
No
Everyone's
songs
like,
will
there's
be
an
in.
interview
No
process
songs.
for playing with my kids, so we'll see how you do, how your kid does on that interview process. We'll go from there. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Kids are amazing, and I think there is a level of when people go, yeah, your life is completely different. It is,
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
and it should be,
Yeah.
you know. But I think what's interesting is that kids, it's such a mirror held up to yourself, because it's like you go, oh my goodness, for me, I'll speak for. I was like, man, I'm selfish. I mean,
Yes.
and I hadn't realized how selfish I was. No one's going, I'm not sitting around being, you know, single or newly married going, I'm really selfish. I'm like, no, I'm pretty good. And then I had kids and I'm like, I am really selfish, you know?
Yeah.
But the desire to shift that because for your kids
Yes.
is overwhelming. And when you embrace that, it becomes something amazing.
Yeah. That's what I think I'm most excited for.
Yeah.
Is that right there.
It's funny too, like I said that same phrase like a couple months after we had our first kid, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how selfish I was. It's funny too, like last year was one of Thrive's busiest years. I think I was on the road like 210 days. Just absolutely crazy. Like I went on Winter Jam 3 weeks after my twins were born. Not a good idea, by the way. Don't do that.
No, there's going to be therapy for that.
But you know, it's like, you know, all of that, like you realize like, oh my gosh, life can get in the way of something so beautiful that God designed, which is to raise kids and to be fruitful, like the Bible says. And so I think it was really interesting, like realizing through the midst of it all, like even when you're tired and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm just like done with the crying, I'm done with like holding a baby or whatever it is. Somebody said this phrase to me in the middle of all of our traveling last year. Man, I was feeling pretty homesick, truthfully. I wanted to be with my girls. They said this phrase to me, like, one day your kid will ask for you to pick them up for the last time. And you're like, oh my goodness. And so to your point,
you're killing me, man.
I know, man. And so like, it's always stuck with me. And it makes me cry every time I think about it. But to your point, like when we realize how selfish we are, there's also this like equal or greater desire that shifts in us to go, I'm going to literally do the best I can for these kids. I'll give my life for these kids because they mean so much to me. And you see them start to grow up and develop new skills or get new words or, you know, even get hurt, you know, It's like, oh my goodness, they're like climbing on the windowsill again.
Personalities start really
totally
taking shape. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's just this beautiful thing that you know, I have to imagine that as I look at my kids and I see the beauty, I see the frustrations, I have all this thing. It's this image into how God looks at us, and it kind of puts so much in perspective.
My wife has this. She got that shirt that the evolution of being a mom or whatever. And it's like mama, mommy, mom, bruh. And it's just like I'm like she's just not okay with that, and everything.
Yeah.
The first time that I went in for a hug with my oldest or whatever, and he did the whole quick fun handshake or whatever. I'm like, what has happened here? Whatever. But I think kids, they show you a lot about, especially, the character and nature of God, and how you don't think you're capable of that kind of love.
Yeah.
And then there they are, So I know that I've talked to your guys' ear off and everything, but I know we've got other stuff and lunch coming out, so which I don't want to bypass any of that. If there was one thing that you would want to share with people, anyone, whether they be worship leaders or just people who are just, figuring out the Christian faith or anything, something from your heart, what would you want people to hear from each of you? And so, Charmaine, if you want, or do you want me to give you more time?
Yeah, maybe just a little bit more time.
Okay. What the most important thing you could
know.
ever say?
Yeah.
Go.
Right.
So much
Exactly.
pressure. Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, Corbin, if you...
I can start.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to just the young leader right now. I think it's just, it's such an interesting season because there's a lot of, passion and desire as young leaders. I remember being 23 and I feel like I was like, why does no one listen to me? I've got all the great ideas. Like I could fix this place in 2 seconds. There's a book called A Tale of Three Kings, right? It's a story of Saul, David, and Absalom. And this is the concept I would say to any young leader. I wish someone would have said it to me earlier, is that David is Saul. However, David went through a season where he got Saul beat out of him. So David was anointed king and then waited for years to actually see that happen, right? And in the midst of all that, he's out in the fields and he's writing songs. He's working on his craft. He is fighting animals off so that he can be prepared to go after Goliath. Like all of these things he's doing in preparation, and Saul is slowly getting beat out of him. So by the time that he is king, he finds himself in this place of, I can actually lead from a healthy spot. And obviously David was not perfect, and I think that's true for everybody. But I think that David would have repeated a lot of Saul's follies if he had not gone through the pruning season that he went through. So my encouragement, I think, is to young leaders, embrace those seasons where you're learning, where you're cutting your teeth, where there's somebody in leadership over you and is saying, actually, we're going to do it this way, and it doesn't line up with how you think you should do it.
Yeah,
Embrace those seasons, because it's going to make you a better leader one day.
That's really good. I would just jump off that for the young leader. I remember, being 19, 20 and thinking every decision I make now is going to impact the rest of my life in such a way that it's like I'm either going to fail or succeed based on the decision that I need to make tomorrow. And I think something to remember is that almost nothing is life or death. Like you don't need to lose sleep over small decisions like, oh Lord, where am I going to get a part-time job while I do ministry? I'm going to find my husband or wife there. I'm going to, all that stuff. The Lord works through in some crazy ways. And I was just talking to Charmaine about how her and her husband met and it's, if you look at them on paper, you have the most unlikely paths crossing. It's so you were born in America, family from
Raised in Australia.
Raised in Australia. And Cameron was born in
Reno, somewhere in California, just so white.
Yes.
I've been there.
Hey, I've been there. And there was nothing that Charmaine and Cameron could do when they were 19 that was like, if I don't do this right, God, I'm not going to come and find Cameron. As long as they are in the Word of God, they are chasing after the will of God. They are praying that God would reveal their calling and a vision for their life. There was nothing they could do to be like, when I'm when I meet my husband at this day, it's going to be this person. You got to trust the process and trust that God will take care of those things that you're so stressed about now. One day you'll look back on and be like, oh, all I had to do was just follow the calling. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
No,
I was
there was an analogy that someone shared with me once. They were like, if you tried to analyze how many different moves the grains of sand had to make to end up on the beach that you're on,
yes,
it would boggle your minds. Or you could just let it go and it'll wash into place.
100%.
You know, and it's just like, but if you work backwards, you're like, oh, if it had gone this way, then you could have ended up over here.
Right.
And it's like, but where is it? You know?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
But to that point, that's so true.
Such a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I got a FaceTime in the middle of all your just gems. My husband texted me and he was like, your son wants to know if you told him he could have ice cream after dinner. And I was like, no, I didn't. So tough conversations are going to be had. Man, there's so many things you could say, right? Like, how do you narrow it down? But I think maybe the thing that has been a constant in my life, what I try and remind myself is, one of our pastors said it so well, your fruits and your gifts, the fruits of the Spirit, everything, the tree doesn't bear fruit so it can eat it itself. The fruit is for others always 100%. And so what you have, if you can keep this in mind, in the forefront of your mind, everything, your gifts, your talents, especially working in the realm of ministry, it is for food for others. It is so people can glean from it and see God. And so if and I think that puts you into perspective. That means that it's not on you, the failures or successes. It keeps your ego, everybody has ego, in check, because I don't know if that's a beast that we can handle ourselves even. I think that needs to just be left to God. But I think this is how he does it, is reminding us that, man, these things that are given, like Jesus, it is for the masses. And if he blesses it, puts his hand on it, it'll feed more people than we could possibly imagine.
I love that. I just want to just say this about you guys. I've known you for the last few years, and it is a privilege to hang with you guys any chance that I get. And I don't want to put anyone else, this isn't a statement about anyone else other than the fact of I really appreciate how genuine, authentic, and how just approachable and just chill you guys are. You have hearts that love to serve, and how many times I've come up to you and going, hey, so we're doing this, and you're like, it's fine, whatever, we're just here. It's unfortunate that it's a novelty in a lot of relationships, that interactions and stuff, but I have a feeling that that is the currency of the future of the church.
I agree.
Is that type of, that genuine, sincere heart to dive in, to connect with people, to be available. And because I think it ties into the ego statement. Ego in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing unless it's unchecked. It's like ego, I have the confidence, I have a healthy ego to, like, I know who I am. But as human beings, and in the platform situations that ministry puts us in, it can get unchecked pretty quickly. And I want to tell you guys just how refreshing it is to be able to, interact with you guys, have a relationship with you guys, and just know that going, man, you guys put some great checks and obviously must have some great checks and balances because you're the real deal. And so I really appreciate you guys.
That
Thank you,
means
man.
a ton.
That
Bro.
does-
And
that
seriously, like feeling is mutual. We just absolutely love it. I told Christian, even just when we were coming here and we were talking through like sound check times, and he's like, oh, it's actually an hour earlier than we were planning on getting there. I was like, whatever they say, like, we're doing, because we're in alignment with
because Chandler is mean.
we're in alignment with your heartbeat and your mission, and we just want to be a part of it whenever we can. So thank you for what you've done and just the amazing resource you've been to the church.
No, I appreciate that. I love having you guys, and looking forward to having you guys out in Orlando this year.
It's gonna be fun.
It's going to be a blast. And I know, you guys are a lot closer to us being in California than, but it seems like we see each other more in Orlando, even though we're actually geographically
That's how it
closer
works
here.
sometimes.
So-
Yeah.
But it's great having you guys. Thank you guys for taking the time to do this as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.